Well, good day, my friends. We're in Seymour, Indiana. Small town that John Mellencamp used to sing about. Let's go explore it. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all begins now. Seymour, Indiana is a German-American town. A lot of Germans came and settled here. And the Mellencamps were one of those families in the late 1800s. So John's family had been in the area his entire lineage, basically. His parents were from this town. He was from this town. Even though he would always say, I couldn't wait to get out. Growing up in Seymour, you never thought that you had the opportunity to be a rock star, to be on a major label, to get out. But he said, I always planned on getting out. And even though he got out, he would find himself working his way back to living in Indiana pretty much his whole life. He has become the voice of, you know, small town America. Even though he says, I am probably the most liberal guy you'll ever meet in a very conservative part of the nation, he said, I always think of fighting for the little man. And even he and Willie Nelson would start the farm aid projects together. So we're gonna see where some of Mellencamp's famous haunts were, including his childhood home. Definitely has that small town feel, but it's also got a little bit of a Mellencamp feel. And his friends would basically become his band, the guys that he grew up with and hung out with here. He said you could pretty much, as they were growing up, find them hanging out on these streets at any given time. And now there's a giant mural over here. When he got started, he was known as Johnny Cougar and he hated it. It was not his choice. How cool is that? To be from a little town, not think you're gonna, or maybe not ever get to fulfill your dream. And he said he felt like that is one of the things that he was lucky enough to do. He said he feels like a lot of people give up too early. He never planned on it. He said, you know, people want to be when he was a kid, he wanted to be a boxer or a football player or a rock star. So he said, he always felt like people gave up. Look at that, I love, man, that looks just like him too. And they also put a statue of him Indiana University this past weekend, so we're gonna go visit that as well. I was born in a small town. Gotta love it. Look, there he is with the jean jacket with the Future Farmers of America patch on the back and a Mellencamp patch, or I mean a Mellencamp belt. That is great. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee 2008. So he actually lived just a half mile away. Well, here's the childhood home of John Mellencamp. I believe it's an Airbnb now. One of the city officials has owned it for like 40 years. He bought it in 1979 and decided to turn it into an Airbnb. So he just felt like, he and his wife felt like that was, you know, John being such a huge figure here in town, that was something nice they could do to commemorate it. But this was a house that his dad bought when John was 3, and then they moved out and sold it when John was 16. So a lot of formidable years. The ideas for Jack and Diane, pink houses, Hurt So Good, all that stuff would have started here. And he had a really interesting childhood because he had spinal bifida, which had him in and out of the hospital having operations. They didn't even think that, you know, he would have a normal life, that he might not even survive. And when he did, when he was okay, his grandmother, he said, would always she was kind of the reason that he had the attitude that he always had. He said every single day she'd say, "Buddy, you're the most good looking, you're the luckiest boy in the whole wide world." And he said, when you have somebody tell you that every day, it's hard not to be confident. So he knew he was good looking and he could get pretty much any girl in town here while he was growing up. He was a real charmer, but he was also known as a smoker, a drinker, and a bully. He liked to get into a lot of fights, and he started smoking when he was just 10 years old. So he would have been living here, probably going around the side of the house or going around back to smoke cigarettes. So when he was graduating high school, his senior year, he ended up getting his girlfriend pregnant, and they decided to just go off and elope. So he had got thrown into the fire from an early age. He had to be an adult. So he was a father and a husband and had a desire to do art. He was actually making like demos and stuff and sending them out. And his friends would say when we'd go over to his house, on his door he'd have all these things taped up. And he said, "What is that?" And he said, "Those are all my rejection letters." He said that he'd been rejected by just about every single label or manager, or anybody that he had sent that tape to had rejected him. So when he went to New York, he was basically leaving and just popped into, dropped off his his tape, and the receptionist said, "Hold on a second," took it to the back to her boss and said, "Okay, he has your tape now, you'll get a call from us." And John said, "I just decided to turn around and drive home." And he said, "I hadn't been back in Seymour for maybe a half a day when they called me and said, 'Hey, can you come in for a meeting tomorrow?'" And I said, "No, I drove all the way back to Indiana, I can't get there tomorrow." And they said, "Don't worry, we'll fly you here." He said, and I knew when they said they were gonna fly me somewhere, that was a good sign. So he went and met with them, and they decided to give him an advance and 2 weeks in the studio and told him to record and see what happened. So he got some of his buddies from around here that he had had bands with. See, he had band in high school because he just wanted to be completely different than anything else in this area. So he grew his hair out long. He had like a glam band. He said it was kind of based off of like the New York Dolls. But what he had recorded was more of what we would know him for. So when they sent him into the studio, he had just a handful of songs. And so he and his friends went in and started recording these songs. And they said after a day and a half in the studio, we were out of stuff. So we just started recording cover songs for fun, sent it off to him because we just thought this was a demo for the record label. And they call us and they say, "Oh, this is great. We're going to put it out just like this. This is like so authentic and original." And he was thinking to himself, why would you put that out? I didn't even plan on that being put out. And then they told him, "Oh yeah, and by the way, your name is now Johnny Cougar." He hated the Johnny Cougar thing from the very beginning, and he said he was indignant about it. He said, "I really dug my heels in and said, I am not gonna go with this name." And they dug their heels in and said, "Well, if you want a record contract, you will." So he agreed to do it, and they released his first record. And then in Seymour, they decided to turn the town festival, the yearly town festival, into Johnny Cougar Day. It was gonna have Johnny Cougar riding around town in a convertible for the parade. And they said, his band member said this was crazy, because he said, we hadn't played out any gigs, nobody knew who we were. They knew John from the area, but they just thought this was a total joke. They thought he was gonna go nowhere, and they couldn't understand why they were making such a big deal and such a hoopla about him. I wouldn't mind staying here. I didn't see an ad for it. I looked on Airbnb, I couldn't find it, but it's a pretty recent article within the last year, and they said, we know people want to eat and sleep where John Mellencamp slept. So just to tie in with some more of his local history, we'll go over to one of the venues that he and his band would play shows at. That is pretty cool to see. I actually just saw John Mellencamp with Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan a couple of weeks ago, and they were really good. The homeowner said in 1985, the woman that was renting the house said she got a knock at the door, and it was John himself wanting to come in and visit the house. John's first album for MCA when he got signed as Johnny Cougar was named Chestnut Street Incident after Chestnut Street here in town. Wouldn't be a Mellencamp video without cornfields, right? So where his big gig was during the start of his career when the album came out. It was right here at the Indiana National Guard in Seymour. I noticed they have the doors open so you can kind of see through the glass some of the performance space where I think he would have performed. So let's go take a look. So that's very likely the room where the band would have played. Think about that. You haven't even really been a band. You get a record deal, and then you tell all your friends, hey, I want you to be in my band. They all had other plans. They were all going to be going off to school, being doctors and things like that, and had to put it on hold. Had to put it on hold and chase a dream. This would have been the very first tour. This would have been the Chestnut Street Incident tour. Wow, they're actually nice enough to let me in. Apparently when he did that first tour, since nobody knew who they were, there was only like 200 or 300 people here, and a lot of them were people that the record label had got girls to wear shirts that said Johnny Cougar's Girls or Cougarettes or whatever, and they hired those girls to come here and, you know, go crazy during the show. So it's pretty cool to see where he would have started out his career in those early days here in Seymour. Man, really cool of them to let me see inside the National Guard Armory too. Wow, that was really cool. Somebody saw me out walking around looking through the windows, and when I told him what I was doing, he said, do you want to go in and take a look? So that was really cool of him. Now we're going to go see his high school, and we're going to head out of town. We're going to go to Indiana University, Bloomington. This is Seymour High School. This is where John Mellencamp went to school, where he graduated from. Other notable graduates from that school were wrestler Rip Rogers and Katie Stam, Miss America. Apparently a lot of Mellencamp's relatives still live here in town, very active in the community. Eventually, as his popularity grew, he changed his name from Johnny Cougar to John Cougar Mellencamp, and now what he prefers, John Mellencamp. John always said the key for him to writing a good song was he wanted to write a song that anybody could sing, that was so simple that, you know, the normal person could hear it on the radio and it could get stuck in their head and they could just sing it the rest of the day. And when he got signed, their original thought was to promote him as kind of like the musical James Dean. What's your favorite John Mellencamp song, Ja? I Need a Lover Who Won't Drive Me Crazy. So we're at Indiana University in Bloomington. We're at the Fine Arts Plaza. They just put a new John Mellencamp statue here, so I'm gonna try and find it. It's so new, it's not documented on any maps or anything anywhere. Not for nothing, I'm just gonna say a lot of these students are not very observant. I've asked 3 people where the new Mellencamp statue is, and none of them knew. And they were all walking past me right here, and I just found it right here, so somehow they've been passing it for days and didn't even notice it, but here it is. He is a big donor to this school in this area. The legend John Mellencamp. He must have made a lot of money in music, because I read that he got so disillusioned in 1988 that he was going to retire even then, and spent 5 years just painting every single day. But that's nice to see somebody do something nice with their money. He also has a little antique store here in town I want to go check out. It says, "No, I cannot forget from where it is that I come from. I cannot forget the people who love me. In honor of the musician, artist, and activist for his generous contributions to Indiana University and ardent faithfulness to his southern Indiana roots." Nice. So there it is, brand new. I just saw the photo of him out here dedicating it and them unveiling it. Here it is, it's called Antiquated Mellencamp Gallery and Antiques. I'm wondering if he puts some of his paintings on display in here. We'll have to check it out, but it is definitely named after him, so That is one of his motorcycles. He loves motorcycles, so that's an Indian. And look at this, they do have a lot of his paintings. He said he has a studio, like a man cave kind of studio, and he's painting all the time still. Look at that, wow. These are great. They're all for sale. It's so crazy to think about, you know, that he was considering retiring in the late 80s just because he was tired of it and wanted to concentrate on painting. Got the best of both worlds now. Still tours and still paints. And still shows amazing memorabilia if you come to Bloomington. Wow, that is so cool.
Did you do stuff to the stage because it looks so cool when you... We purchased this building, oh my goodness.
His daughter actually works here.
Buildings and stuff, and then
Neat.
we just started renting it out to different people. And then 7 years ago when I was pretty much done teaching, my dad's like, you want to come here and do this? I was like, sure. So...
Used to be a family meeting place, this building.
I taught special needs, and I was just...
She said the prices are basically from like $7,000 to $50,000.
Oh, really? It's a challenge. Which is when I graduated. He had given me that I asked for earlier.
There's a lot of work on display here. Got a canoe up there just in case. Some lockers. A skull. Hello. When they say antiques, they mean it. Antiques and art. Gosh, this is so cool to just be able to come in and see his art. And look, he's got little boxing gloves because he once wanted to be a boxer. I think that's still a hobby. That's a neat one. He's been controversial throughout his life as an artist because he hates racism. So he has used several of his artistic avenues to kind of speak against it. Even his music videos. I think this one might be my favorite of all of them. It's a pretty big place, so it's definitely worth checking out if you make your way to Bloomington and Indiana University. So she was telling me that all these are things that used to be in the family, like family furniture. And I asked whose bed this was, and she said it was her grandmother's. And I said, wait, was this his grandmother that used to, you know, build up his self-esteem every day? She said that was her bed. How cool is that? So I noticed these bongo drums, and I was kind of thinking about, because I didn't mention to you guys when we were out at his childhood home, that he had said in an interview that his dad used to have bongo parties, and people would come over and play the bongos. So I think I'm gonna buy these. They're pretty reasonable. And she said, I asked if I could leave them here and get them signed, and she said I could. So I'm gonna pick them up in a couple of weeks. Man, that is so cool. All right, my friends, we are gonna call it a day. That place was amazing. I couldn't believe it. The more I talked to her, the more I found out all that furniture in there was from one of his houses from somewhere, going back like 50 years. So if you're in town, come check it out. Like I said, I was asking about those bongos, and they're pretty reasonably priced. I said, if I leave them here, could you get them to sign them for me if I came back and picked them up? She says, sure. So we will come back. I'll come back and pick those up at some point. And thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed our day on John Cougar Mellencamp. He doesn't like the Cougar anymore, but a lot of people know him from Johnny Cougar, John Cougar Mellencamp, or John Mellencamp. He's a legend. Hurts so good, baby. Have a great night, and goodbye.